What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Overthrow Disc Golf video. Today we are talking about putting because, you know, Josh doesn't putt. Let's get into it.
So I have taught a fair amount of putting lessons and, you know, garnered some decent results, but I have just the slightest of feelings that Robbie has taught way more. And before I forget, if you want a putting lesson from Robbie.
Oh, that's very kind. We do it over at foundationdisc.com.
So today I want to get from him just kind of his overall every good putt, whatever the style has, maybe these things. I know he's got some of those in his mind.
Yeah.
And then I want to go through how he might teach a push putt, a spush putt, and a spin putt, asking questions along the way that I might have. If you're like me and you're curious about how people teach this stuff, hang around.
So I would say the three biggest things I talk about on putting in general are we want to understand where power comes from in a putt, because I think a lot of people struggle at certain distances. And so if we can teach them sort of, I think about like a control panel where there's just like a bunch of pistons and levers and things that you can use. And if you know how to generate power, depending on how far away from the basket you are, you can sort of crank those things up and down to sort of help yourself in the process. Talk about that, talk about commitment. A lot of people are so worried about the mental side of things. I think that it sort of holds you back from committing to the putt properly because we're thinking about results of putts, whether they're staying in the basket, whether they're going past the basket. So I like to spend a little bit of time on every lesson talking about committing to the shot, because when we're committed, just like any shot, right? Like we're gonna throw better shots when we're committed. And then the last thing is routines. I think that putting, it's so easy to create a solid routine inside of putting, and that probably helps when you do backhand and forehand and approaches and things like that. But because the shot shaping is so different often in those situations, it's a little harder, I feel like, to build a consistent routine, whereas putting 9 times out of 10, circumstances are almost the exact same. So I like to focus on ending with a routine is sort of what I talk about. But power, the big thing is I talk about there's really 3 places that power comes from. Power comes from the fingers, power comes from the wrist, and power comes from the legs. The arm is where people start to use, but I like to think about the arm as like the barrel of the gun. When I fire, the arm is just a guiding principle as it comes in. I'm using power from those 3 sources, and depending on the type of putt I'm doing is where I'm going to be generating even more power out of those places.
2 questions.
Yeah.
First, does that change for you at certain ranges? And then second question would be, does it change based on style of putts?
Yes and yes. The wrist involvement is going to be one of the major factors in both styles of putts. I think that people often, for instance, I did a lesson with someone today, and he told me that he was a spin putter when we started the lesson. And I watched him throw his first putt, and it was a push putt through and through. But it's because it was spinning, he thought, I have a spin putt. We aren't throwing knuckleballs with push putts, right? And so one of the things that I like to do, you talk about like distances, right? So one of the exercises that I'll do with people if I'm doing an in-person lesson is we'll start from about this distance to the basket, which is about what, 8 feet, 7 feet, something like that. And so from here, I'm literally just gonna show that it's just wrist and fingers coming to the bucket.
Okay, let me try.
So you can't even pull down here, right here, just fire.
Just wrist.
Wrist and fingers.
So do I curl?
You can, yeah, curl is fine. However you want to do this. Yeah, and so a little more finger engagement and we're sending it through.
So that I used a little bit of arm.
Okay.
But this brings like an important point that I think some people might overlook is when we're talking about finger engagement.
Yeah.
You have to be curled somewhat.
One of the things that I use a lot in my lessons, I talk about finishing positions, which I'm sure is something that like is different in backhand and all that, right? Because finished positions are where you sort of done the follow through and things like that. Whereas in putting, I'll do a lot of things where I will have someone hold their putter, right? And so they'll lock out their putter with their like fingers totally pushed out, or they'll have like this finger up here. This is like a very common grip. Finger on the edge of the disc, fingers fully extended.
Common bad grip.
Common bad grip, I would say, yes.
Okay.
So the reason for this is we talk about one of the sources of power is the fingers. So from here, if I want to extend my fingers they're already fully extended. That's a finished position. So therefore, from just how I'm gripping the putter to start, I have cut off a third of my power options because my fingers are locked out. Whereas if I just simply take those fingers and curl them in just the slightest bit, I'm creating tension from the thumb on top and in those so that I can move this putter in and out. Now I have very large hands, so if you have smaller hands, you're not gonna be able to get that much defined movement that I'm getting out of the putter. Like, I mean, I'm moving this.
Oh, it's a this movement, not a, well, for push. So I know we're kind of bleeding into different things. Push, it would be an upward kind of spring.
Correct, right? Which is why I like, for pushing, I'm a push putter. I love really hard plastic, really firm plastic, because I'm digging in with my fingers. They're going from this curled position to extending and popping into the disc. And if I putt with a softer putter, I feel like I can feel the putter giving as I'm driving into the disc. So I think for a lot of push putters, you can have a lot more of a firm putter. Probably helps if you've been struggling.
So is it fair to say then, when it comes to the finger, the fingers for you, that if we go push putt, the finger direction is upward predominantly, and then for a spin putt, you're saying there's a little resource here for kind of an unfurling. I would call this kind of, in my mind, it's when the guys like fling up the pizza dough. Yeah.
In spin putting, it is definitely more of a, this tension is still in the fingers, but it's pulling the shot forward, which is harder to do if my fingers are fully extended. And as I'm push putting, the further I get away from the basket, this is something you asked, like how do I adjust power and things like that, because the fingers are gonna have more power. This is sort of like my push putt and my spin putt from about 25 feet have the exact same grip. When I get further out on a push putt, my grip doesn't change. My swing path changes, how much leg involvement changes, and the speed that my wrist is opening changes. So those factors change. But on a spin putt, I'm gonna keep my stroke very similar. I'm just gonna bring these fingers closer and closer into the rim so that because I'm trying to pull more, that lets me have more of a defined pull on the shot. Because I think for a lot of spin putters, when you're too close to the basket, I mean, when you were spin putting for a while, you'd rather be at 25 because you have a chance to let it go versus
60.
15 to 20 feet. I have to commit at the same level that I do at 60 feet, but if I miss, I'm 40 long. And that can be terrifying. But if you just spread those fingers out on the rim a little, or on the flight plate a little bit, it's a built-in governor.
Yeah, maybe that's why, like maybe that's one of the reasons we see like a Simon and an Eagle, like very spin putty guys, obviously.
Yeah.
More here.
Yeah, and I'm sure the top of the game, right? Like they're so comfortable. Simon has spin putt more than probably several people watching this video have thrown shots. I think looking at that in a very similar way to like when we study backhand form and all that for the pros, there are little things that they do that are like, it's just natural for them. Whereas I think on spin putting in general, yeah, like if you're learning spin putting, spread those fingers out just a little bit and feel that like, that pull of the shot to unfurl. Yeah. Bring it through.
So can we from here show the difference in just that first lever that you're looking at for push versus spin?
So talking fingers, the wrist is going to get involved here a little bit, just because the two major differences are on the wrist. On a push putt, we're supinating. On a spin putt, we're pronating, is the idea. Some people like to push back on that, but we'll talk about that in the wrist. One of the big things is that you talked about my fingers are driving up. My fingers are not only driving up on a push putt, they're also driving out. And the reason for this is I think a lot of people when they putt start at like 12 o'clock on the putter. And so they're here, and I call it the mirror of shame. We're all, like so many people can resonate with this. They're looking at their putter and they're just thinking like, oh man, I really hope I don't miss this putt. And then they bring it down and they're flat as all get out right here. And now my wrist is in the way. And so even if my fingers are curled and I'm trying to pop it up, my wrist is so in the way that I'm gonna yoink it to the right. Like it's just gonna be an issue. We like to flex on our friends. So I like to show the putter to my card mates and say, look at this, I'm about to drain this putt. So they can look in the mirror of shame. And as I bring the disc down, I'm gonna focus on sort of leaving my wrist, trying to keep it about 3 o'clock on the disc. 1 to 2 o'clock if we're thinking about a clock, like 1 to 2 o'clock at worst, but 3 o'clock, and I bring it down. And then and once again, really cool thing you can do in this exercise is at every position, just take the putter out of your hand and see what your fingers are doing. Have your fingers fully extended? What are they doing? Things like that. Because you can see, have I reached a finished position? Am I still curled? Okay, no, I'm still curled. Awesome. So from here, I'm simply going to be turning my wrist up and extending the fingers. Turning my wrist up, extending the fingers. That's all that's happening underneath. And so as I drive, so my arm, the involvement of my arm is, once again, it's the barrel of the gun. If I just do the wrist, I'm like releasing this wild cannon out into the world. The arm just simply guides towards it. I'm not trying to actively throw it, because that can lead to figure eighting that we'll talk about with the wrist.
So for push and most push,
yeah,
it's supinate, extend.
Correct.
So I'll try that and you correct me. Flexing, supinate, extend.
Yeah, a lot of my putting knowledge came from Mike Strauss. Like, give credit where it's due. I think that's something that we need to do in the coaching community, right? So a lot of my knowledge is, Mike is like one of the best putting coaches that I've ever worked with. And so I use a lot of his vernacular. Feeling the weight of the disc is something that's really big. And so often we make putting so lightweight because we stress grip. So another thing your fingers are doing is you're over gripping the disc. Now it's weightless. Now it's an arm thing because I have no weight to the disc.
So I kind of explain them as finger springs.
Yeah.
Right, in your body, the forward movement of your body is loading those finger springs, right? Too tight, you can't load.
Yeah.
Right? Too straight, can't load.
Yeah.
So you need something that as your body's moving forward, it goes. And I think that's probably what your flexing on it thing does.
Yeah.
Is when you're here, you're kind of naturally like loading these.
Oh, for sure.
You're letting the weight of the disc
Yeah, the
load
weight
the
loads
springs.
it, and then I'm just popping from there.
Yeah, I think sometimes we see guys come down like this as well, and they can kind of load that way a little bit, where they're under here and the disc, the stamp goes forward, so kind of that, I don't know, air resistance kind of helps, that drag kind of helps load the springs too. But it seems like really important for push putts to load the springs like.
Yeah. And I one thing that I really try to teach people in putting, push putters, is trying to just focus on getting the disc flat. It's near impossible to actually let those finger springs pop and the disc not come out flat as it's flying through the air. So if I take this like rangefinder, right? You can set your putters down. So if I toss you this rangefinder, and now I want you to just toss it back to me, right? Okay, awesome. Now I'm gonna toss it to you again. When you toss it to me this time, I want you to keep your hands like this, like a claw. Don't open it when you try to throw it to me. So much harder to get it there. So you go again.
So there's just me popping it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cornhole.
Exactly.
Versus.
Exactly. When you're cornhole, you're trying to get some like oomph on it. Our body knows how to do this.
Right.
But for some reason, when we put a Frisbee in our hand, we're like, I don't know what to do with these.
Why?
So that's like my helpful thing. I've done it with an egg before, like a putting clinic I did. I hard boiled a bunch of eggs and everyone just tossed eggs back and forth to start the putting clinic.
So of your keys, we've got fingers for push and spush.
Yes.
Spin. Take me through that.
Yeah, so spin putting, one of the big things that spin putting, I think people learning spin putting do incorrectly, especially for amateurs, is they let gravity fight them on spin putting, so they waterfall it. So they're gonna bring it down here and they're gonna waterfall over the top trying to do this. But we watch some excellent spin putters of the world are much more top down. They're letting the disc come through. So fingers here are trying to actively pull off the disc and send towards the target. When I spin putt, I feel like when I spin putt effectively, and I see people spin putt effectively, it's very hard for them to not finish with the fingers dialed out at the target. If you're half-hearted spin putting, you're sort of not committing the shot right there. So when I think about having my fingers in that pulling position and getting them out to the target, it lets me feel that like that pull coming through it.
If you don't know and you've been living under a rock, I've had the worst putting yips that anyone on the planet has ever experienced in disc golf. I don't know about real golf. Maybe there's somebody out there.
I think that is a Guinness record proving.
I've got it. I had the roughest time, so I went into how guys are attacking spin putts because I really want a good spin putt. A lot of these guys, the big thing for me was clearing my fingers out from underneath because the spin putt, if you're going here, it's just these fingers are so underneath the disc and it's so hard to get them out clean. So I think we do see like a lot of guys and girls, like I think of Chantel, where they're kind of here and then it's
Anheuser.
They kind of pronate into it to get that sucker out. So you get a lot of like nose up spin putts.
Yeah, I think that Anheuser angle is really cool. One of the grips that I think really revolutionized it for me was thinking about like Strauss example again, holding a Nerf football. When I go to run, like if I were to tuck a Nerf football when I was running, it would be in this position and I would have it here. And it's higher, it's definitely higher, and that can be uncomfortable for a lot of people. I think it's definitely not as natural for lots of folks to have that spin from the chest. And I would say when you're learning it, that's where if you develop a spin putt from the chest, you're gonna have to bring those fingers in when you go to distance, because it gets very, very difficult when people are learning this at first to spin putt from 35 just straight from the chest if your fingers are spread out. So you're gonna need to bring those fingers in closer and closer to the rim the further out you get.
And this video isn't about my putt, my personal putt, but I will say something that I notice with these putters is when you go in Anheuser for spin putt, it brings your elbow in and it makes it so that it's only the barrel. Because it's very easy for me if I'm here to have my elbow way out and create a backhand full-blown power pocket on the putting green. And I putt real far. Putt real far this way, but it's not a barrel anymore. I create a full-blown whip instead of kind of what you're saying, where here it's easy to get it out of the fingers. So we're not going to spend too much time on the barrel because it's a very kind of passive thing for him. But I think with spin putters, you don't see the elbow way out. Part of that happens, I think, when you have your hand more at that like 2-3 o'clock position, because that doesn't change for you for spin and push putt. So when there, it kind of tucks your elbow inside so you can just keep this forward instead of here.
And I think when you learn to get those fingers involved, like even when I do this exercise, like as I'm spinning, I just hit Dakota.
Take that.
There you go.
He's bleeding. Are you okay?
No, oh no! Like as I'm doing this exercise, the disc has a hard, like I have to squeeze the disc on release, because even when doing that exercise, it's actively leaving my hand. And that's where I really do. I think that people are struggling. One of the biggest factors in putting that people struggle with is they over grip. Like they're just gripping so hard that this thing doesn't weigh anything. 175 grams disappears with just a little bit of finger tension. So we want to find that, even on spin putting, we're trying to find that weight that we can rocket out of our hand. That outside edge of the disc is such our friend, because every other athletic thing you've ever done in your life, which includes like throwing trash into a trash can, is an athletic move. Embrace that with the other half of the putt instead of like letting the fingers do too much work and heavy lift on any of the three.
Well, just real quick, it's interesting that you said about outside edge, because I think about putts generally as controlling the whole disc.
Yeah.
Like much more, I got this whole chonker, I'm putting that where I want it to go, not I'm trying to whip the backside of this towel around.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, spin putts. It's not something I've considered before.
Because I think on push putting especially, when you learn to feel that weight of that disc, and we'll talk about it on the wrist as well, when you can control that weight of that disc, it becomes so much easier to do a lot of stuff. But the wrist really does involve a lot in this.
So for spin putting, set me up on your drill for kind of the first part of spin putting.
Yeah, like if you were like
if you were
brand new
building
student. Yeah, so what I would do is I would stand about right here, and I would literally have you just, instead of like what we did on the push where it's just here, the barrel is very important on a spin putt because you have to stay just as committed at this range as you do at 35 or 40. So it would be from right here, it would just be curled on the anhyzer, extend out, feel those fingers. The fingers are going to be spread out here. We want to make sure that we're not on the rim yet, because that's going to be our power change as we go. So if we're starting here, we're starting in the power loaded position later.
Good to go, setup wise?
Setup wise, yeah.
The opposite of flexing on your friends, or your friends are on the other side.
The friends
now.
on the other side, yeah.
That's right. Okay, so here, is that correct?
Yep.
Here,
yep.
Here.
Feeling those fingers. The fingers are really the focus point here. Pulling the fingers in and
kind of
really
dragging the disc forward.
Correct.
With
and
fingers.
The thumb is helping you in this. Like we haven't mentioned the thumb, but the thumb is actively involved in this.
Pushing,
as well.
like pushing towards the target.
Pulling the fingers.
Here we go. Yep. Drag the fingers towards the pull. They're stacked, baby.
Bang.
Shoot, if that don't work.
It works every time.
Then we're unlinking his lessons. That's it.
That's true.
If it doesn't work the first time, not a good coach.
That is correct.
You're only good if they
only as good as your
immediately are
first
able
application.
to apply it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Right. So talking about the wrist, I think it's a good point that you brought up on like the elbow being out. So a lot of people, early access to power, lots of people get from figure eight, which is that casting of the spell. They're bringing it in. It's loosey-goosey. The wrist isn't really compact doing anything. And it feels very simple to do this. Any person that you've ever taken to their first round of disc golf is going to be doing something like this. They're going to be far enough away from the basket. They're going to do one of these lean forward things because they're like, hey, I got to get close to the basket. And they're going to cast this voodoo magic and they're going to try to send it. They probably are not going to drill the basket. Like it's just this whipping motion that they're trying to do.
Oh, I can show you.
I mean, that's a lot of power. And that's
a lot of power. Think about it, Robbie. What if we can contain that?
What if we could control the power?
I tried for years. It doesn't work.
So many people do this over and over again. And by doing this figure eight, it becomes a lot harder to get proper finger engagement because the disc is like, I either have to overgrip to where now it really doesn't weigh anything, or I'm loose on the grip and now my fingers can't be involved and they're in that finished position because I'm slinging the disc around. All bad. When it comes to using the wrist, we're talking about that supination or that pronation. That is the basic principle here.
Which isn't really using, theoretically, it's not even using the wrist at all.
Yeah, it's more so, I guess, the forearm being used.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about using the wrist, that weight of the disc really coming in. So what I like to check is people come through and they bring the putter down flat, right? They bring the putter flat. And once again, our best way to check how is this actually affecting my putt is just remove the putter. So from right here, even if I have my fingers curled in, I'm in this position. All right, awesome. Now, let me fire and supinate this wrist on a push putt. I've got very little room to do so. Whereas if I think about, I'm on it looks like I'm hyzer putting here, but I'm doing the mirror to my card mates, things like that. Now, when I take it out of my hand, I have all of this room to open the wrist up. In the same way, where I can sort of come through, and even something that I noticed with when you were putting, Josh, on the spin putt is that it was sort of like straight up and down like this. But even if I curl in just a little bit, which is what sort of you're getting towards with yours, is like I curl, it almost is like showing the face of the putter even more to the basket. That curls the wrist in, so now when I unfold and I supinate or pronate on a spin putt, I'm just angling my wrist based on how I'm holding the disc in order to actively engage it one way or the other. Josh nailed it, that so often people think you have to get to this like exaggerated palm out, like this position, but there's not a lot of room inside of the stroke for that to occur. So it is pronation, but it's not as extreme as the supination on the spin putt or on the push putt. Mm-hmm. You could finish a push putt like this very easily. I think rarely is it gonna feel completely natural on a spin putt for you to be just like,
yeah, it's not really like a
down.
Forced action. The thing is, you just got to get your fingers out of the way.
Correct.
Like if you push really hard on a push putt with your thumb,
yeah,
like your thumb is not pushing hard.
No, not
because
on a push,
that is, as you try to pop, your thumb's got to get
direction.
out of dodge so that
yeah.
you can pop this sucker up. On a spin putt, these
My thumb
fingers
is
have
sort
to
of
clear.
driving it, yeah.
So you have to kind of roll this way to get these fingers out of the way.
Yeah. On a push putt, that supination is happening earlier in the shot. That's another very important thing, is that I think a lot of people, when they're popping the finger and they're doing this, they're bringing the putter down flat. So now I can't really engage the wrist. The fingers could fire, but then as I go, I call it willing the disc into the basket. So if I throw these push putts and I'm like really trying to get it there, I'm popping the wrist torso-wise in the upper half I'm like firing everything here, and it's gonna cause the putter to come in crazy nose down. And I need to trust that I'm loading down here, and when I pop, that gunpowder explosion is happening here, and then this is just the barrel extending. Mm-hmm. So we talked, the barrel's very passive. The wrist fires and that supination happens. Now close range, we did this exercise already, right? With the fingers, where we're this close to the basket and all we're doing is just extending. We're turning the wrist and popping the fingers forward. But I'm doing that exercise, right? And the further I get away, the more I'm gonna use my wrist to pop, and the arm is just gonna allow me sort of more power and time to come up with the shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like cornhole.
Yeah.
Right, when you're playing cornhole, you're releasing, so it comes out somewhere here. It's not like you get all the way to the end here and then it comes out of your hand.
Because that's just gonna send it straight up in the air.
Right, yeah, it's somewhere before that, and this is just kind of follow through. So you're saying on push putt, it's really popping out somewhere here.
Yeah.
Right, and then the rest of it, like now it's traveling down the barrel.
Yep. Yeah.
That's the idea.
And the further you get away from the basket, the faster, the biggest change is how fast does this fire.
Yeah. Now, does it ever help you to like make that distinction of it actually comes out sooner than you might think, or?
When oh, absolutely. So one of the biggest things, I think, when you are trying to work on your putt is identifying, like, if you're having a bad round off the tee, most often you're not necessarily trying to fix it mid-round, you're just trying to deal, right? In putting, because the control, it's so much slower of a movement, you can sort of make some adjustments on the fly, but you have to know what's causing these misses. Mm-hmm. So if I'm yoinking to the right quite often, most of the time it's because positionally my wrist is getting too involved in the shot. So I'm either figure eighting or I'm holding at 12. Now my wrist is in the way. So now for me to fire the shot, what has to happen? It's got to uncurl, which is just the backside of the figure eight. I got to make sure that I know that miss. So thinking about like, oh, am I popping soon enough? If I'm throwing a lot of putts and they're flying like this through the air most of the time, I'm gonna really struggle to A, have enough power to get it to the basket over and over again, but B, I'm gonna know, okay, you just gotta commit earlier. Mm-hmm. And that's where I say it's willing it into the basket, because it's a nervous pop of like, I have all of this power from supinating the wrist and popping the fingers, and if I miss, who knows where it's going. Whereas if I just commit to the pop and then follow through, I'm gonna be guiding into the basket every time. And in most cases, you're gonna draw metal So it's not even like it's going that far, even if it does.
So just to kind of summarize, a push putt, if you hold on to it too long and you're here, you're kind of already at the end of the barrel here. So now if you try to pop,
yeah,
you're going
it's
nose
very
down,
difficult from this position.
Because your fingers are already forward.
Yeah, correct.
At that point. So for you, that miss, you kind of solved that by committing a bit earlier versus.
Yeah, because like even there, neither of those had a ton of power behind them, but the one that popped low made it to the basket. The other was still short.
Right.
The legs are something that I think really helps with commitment more so than raw power. Like I feel like a lot of great putters have power coming from their legs, but it is not necessarily like a make or break for them. Probably the most dominant example of someone that you might think is a make or break for them would be Ricky Wysocki. So
yeah, I mean Ricky approximately putts like this.
Yeah, right.
Approximately.
So I had them start in the Calvin position. Calvin looks like someone who's on the opposite side of Ricky, where he is just minimally using his legs. Until you watch closely and you realize what he's using his legs for is momentum, which helps on the commitment side, right? Like Calvin is rocking, he's here, and then there's just this little bit of rock back that lets it carry towards the basket. So Ricky is much lower towards here, but there's a moment where it pops and explodes, and he has that pop, but it is still just momentum guidance carrying him towards the basket. Where people mess this up is they don't think about the momentum going towards the basket. They just think about generating momentum in general with their legs. So if I'm straddle putting, why so many people struggle with straddle putting is because they go here and they're so focused on momentum just standing up in the shot. That doesn't carry me towards the basket. That just takes me straight up. So when I'm straddle putting, I need to make sure that things are in sync. So things are coming up and in. I feel like if you're straddle putting, my hot take is that like you should be balanced, but on your way to a foot fault every time you straddle putt. If you're straddle putting and you're coming up on your heels, you're actively moving backwards with this. Whereas a good straddle putt, I can come up and land on the balls of my feet when I do this. You go watch Nate Sexton putt. He's here, he's spinning. And he rocks up. But you're guiding that momentum up and everything's stopping here. Ricky's putt comes down. Everything loads. Bang, it fires towards the basket. Another big thing on the legs is because it's using the power to create momentum towards the basket, you very much have to be careful where you are aiming with your legs, because that does derail so many people, right? Like, I'm sure you've seen it lesson after lesson. If I'm putting towards Dakota right now, I'm gonna go full Ricky, right? Like I'm gonna lean into this. Now, when I go to bring the putter down, my leg's in the way. So how I'm gonna correct with that is I'm gonna get my leg out of the way with my arm. So I'm gonna pull it down here. Now, when I go to shift the momentum, I'm sending the disc, I'll use a small twig just to extend and show how far off the arm's going, right? Like here, this fires forward. But when I pull it out of the way, I'm off. And the further away from the basket I am, the more that miss is gonna exaggerate to the basket. So we gotta make sure, I was trying to get the student today who was he wanted, like the Ricky putt made sense. Instead of being loaded back here, shorten it a little bit, bend the knees a bit more, come here, come down so the arm is in a straight line, fire the shot, which is where Ricky shines, because I don't think Ricky is as split as we think he is. I think he's much more in this like balanced, loaded, almost sumo type position.
Let me recap with some different verbiage that I might use in lessons.
Yeah.
and correct me if I'm wrong, if this is not how you would teach it. The big thing for me with footwork is we want to find our line, our direct line to the basket with our arm.
Yeah.
Right, with our disc.
Yeah.
It needs to travel straight the whole time. So we take someone like Ricky, or let's take Gannon, for example, because everybody wants Gannon's putt.
Yeah.
Right, and so Gannon draws his line from inside his like left hip, left leg, here. Right, and that means that his stance is going to be closed off a bit more.
Yes.
Right, but that stance doesn't inhibit the line of the arm.
Yeah.
So a good stance, maybe we could say two things about a good stance would be, it doesn't change your arm line. It's not like you stand here and now our arm line's this way. We're not sweeping it left to right.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't have to make adjustments because of my stance. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the stance also, whether you're a rocker or a springer, I would say you got kind of two types of people. You got people who, well, you got three types, right? You got people who load down, Paul Macbeth, and they kind of spring up the pole.
Yeah.
Right, so you got people who generate here, and then their hand kind of, everything else is kind of moving towards it, even though they're not like...
Yeah, they're not falling forward at
falling
it.
forward.
Yeah.
And then we've got people like Ricky who rock, where it's your body is driving, you know, kind of rocking back away, and then your body, your momentum, your mass, you're kind of driving the truck, so to speak, towards the basket.
Yeah.
Right? And then your arm pops inside of that.
Yeah.
But your body gives momentum towards the basket, which is giving your hand room to kind of guide pop inside of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, your third would be people who kind of are kind of, you know, they might go down and back.
Yeah. I think that it's important to think about the idea of bracing with your legs.
Hey, I'm for it.
Like, right? Like, I think that's what's missing in a lot of people's disc golf putting leg work, is that they're just not bracing. So you talk about the spring, right? Like when Paul Macbeth is coming forward and he's springing, he's not just like, he's not bracing so hard that he's like throwing his putt like that. Like it's coming up a little bit to where there's just enough tension running up the front leg that keeps him here. So it's not bracing as extreme as we need on a backhand or a forehand, right? Where you're sliding around going Tom Cruise on the hardwood floors. But it is bracing enough that your leg has to actively engage in stopping the momentum from carrying forward.
Can you show me the difference between not and...
Yeah, so...
Right and wrong here?
Yeah.
Because the putting brace is not a concept like...
Yeah, that's very developed.
That I can't say I'm like, putting brace.
Yeah.
So I want to see.
Let's send it. Yeah. If I'm not bracing, we'll go with like the Paul, right? Like I think that Paul has this like...
Not crayons.
Yeah. So Paul Macbeth, he's toe tapping on top, right? And he's bringing it down and he's here. And then he's going to fire like that. If I was not bracing, straight, there it is. Yeah, it's just straight up and down. Like my body has to brace because momentum is moving me this way and something is keeping my body from following through on the other side. Because putting doesn't allow us to do that. Where I think a lot of people, as soon as they bend, are just isolating that arm and they're just going straight up. I mean, very similar to straddles, right? Like we're here and I'm not, it's just that little bit of a swing that's happening because even Paul, who isn't a swingy, he's exploding forward. If he wasn't exploding forward, I don't think that back leg would need to kick like it does as a counterweight.
Okay, so is the concept that you're trying to explain that, like, I would say there's a timing component to this.
Okay.
And the timing component that I teach is that the body momentum starts before the hand goes.
Yeah.
So it would be, if I like exaggerate this timing, it would be both are kind of coming back together, right? And then right here, my body starts going, I start pressing with the legs, and that is the first move that moves the disc forward. It's not I'm going here and now my hand and my leg, although they might be going up at the same time, are separate.
Yeah.
There's almost a little bit of like a lag component. There's like a body drives a little bit.
Yeah.
So it would be, if I segmented it, it would be both kind of back together, body, and then that starting to move my hand, and then my hand pops.
Yes.
So what you're saying is it's a
that little
unconnected putt.
Yeah, and that little bit of tension demonstrates itself to create that separation. Like that little bit of tension in the quad and the like all of this lets you know, hey, it's time to fire. And then you look at the people who would arguably not be using their legs in a Calvin and things like that, but the same tension is occurring because all of their momentum is over, and so something's stopping them when they go to throw, where it's bring it back here, like this hits, boom, everything is stopped.
Yeah.
Hand fires.
Yeah, the reason it stops is because like you're transferring
all that power from the legs has
to
hit
your hand. That's why this decelerates, basically. So, which is, we call it a putting brace, per se. But yeah, it's that crucial relationship between body begins the momentum. Body takes the arm forward, even if it's just for a little bit.
Yeah.
And
straddle, once again, I think, like I want to identify straddles, why so many people struggle with straddles, and it's probably that exact concept, is they're doing it at the same time. I'm down here, I bring the putter down, and I'm just...
Right. Yeah, there's no purpose. There's no connection.
It's not. But it's, once again, keeping that wrist locked solid, because the temptation could be when you try to overemphasize the disconnect, we're figure eighting.
Straddle putts, the thing that's hard for a lot of people, because a lot of people aren't down and uppers. They're not springers.
Yeah.
So they're not used to generating that. They're not used to that rhythm between straddle and stagger. Right? They'll usually rock back. So straddle, down, right? The body goes up.
Pause.
And then
fire.
The hand takes over and fires.
Yeah.
So sometimes you'll see like Kristen or someone do like a little loop and they kind of sync these. It's kind of like a whoop, boom, and the hand ends up going.
Yeah.
So the other thing I think with straddles is that there might be some lower body adjustments that you have to do. Like Paul, for example, you're not going to be here and maintain your line, right? If you're used to going inside of your left leg as your line, and you draw back to the same place, now my line is tugging right. So what Paul does for this is he'll tweak his like right knee inside, and he'll almost drop this left foot back a little bit. So now he can have this same inside the left leg, and now it's straight.
That's a good word.
That's working working the arm swing. So where's my straight arm swing? Then how does my body kind of drive my momentum towards the basket?
And I think a last little note that I'd give on this, because I feel like this video has been long enough already for you guys, and if you want more, we can always follow up in another one. Is that fair?
Yeah.
So, is that front foot we talk about in the footwork, not letting the like setup derail you? Don't be afraid to turn that front foot a little bit. I think so many people get locked into front toe has to be pointing at it, which causes the hips to be all weird and wonky, and like it just gets there. So don't be afraid to like turn that front foot just the slightest bit. It's something that isn't like it has to work for everyone, but a shocking amount of people should be turning their front foot some, and they just don't. And I don't know why. Like it's like the one thing that everyone who teaches putting just forgets to talk about. But when you literally watch people line up on the Pro Tour, so many of them are angled.
Recap in overthrow language, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong. So first most important thing here is generating power from the fingers and I would say the supination or pronation of the forearm. So push putt, finger spring, popping up and extending. Spin putt, pronating and extending. The elbow, not a power generator. It's just kind of after you've already popped, you're already got the bullet going down the barrel here, kind of helping you extend towards your target.
Or in the other way. The same thing.
Yeah.
Like it explodes here and goes down the line.
Mm-hmm. And there's legs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then legs. We've got this brand new concept.
Oh, breaking coaching moment.
I mean, this is, I don't know why everybody's not teaching this.
Yeah, no one teaching this concept. We just discovered
it's the putting brace. So, which I would say,
t-shirts coming soon.
Which I would say is a timing aspect of you want your body momentum going either up the pole or maybe even through the basket, and that body momentum gives you a little bit of lead time and starts getting the disc moving towards the target, and then your hand kind of takes over and pops from there. That definitely went in the basket.
If there's questions, let us know in the comments. And
yeah, of course we're like ready to do another one.
I love talking about putting. I was giving this analogy because we've been here at Cactus Rock doing clinics, and I told someone that I think what's really fun is Josh can watch most anyone throw a disc golf disc, and it's just black and white. Here's what they're doing wrong, here's what they're doing right, and like things just stand out to you about disc golf form because you've been doing this for so long. That is how I feel about putting. I don't know what it is about putting. I can watch someone putt and it's just clear as day. And that's why I'm so grateful for our friendship, because I think that we can balance each other in this realm. I can talk about some form things, but you're always going to do it better. And he's going to be better at me in putting too.
I'm here. I'm here for putting. I'm here to suck all of the putting knowledge out of your earthen vessel.
It's going to be great. So I'm grateful for Josh and that best coaching channel on the internet, I believe.
On the entire internet.
On all of the internet, all sports combined. Overthrow disc golf.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Of course, if you want lessons from Robbie Foundation, head over to the Foundation Disc Golf website. Yeah. And that's where you'll find this guy if you want to master your putting.
If you want to master the rest of your game, patreon.com/overthrowdiscgolf. We'll see you there.
We'll take it, and we'll take your money. Peace.